and the pressure got to his heart, it killed him, and he was only 56 when he died.
What about your sister? What did she do?
What did she do, or?
Yeah, what did she do?
Well, I mean, she had regular nursing problems, and I mean, regular nursing duties, and I don't know just what she encountered in that African campaign, but I'm sure it was pretty rugged for them. But they were facing the German army, you know, and that thing, and so they had a different set of circumstances to face than what we did.
What about, you came over, you went to the Philippines on a ship, I assume?
Well, yes and no. We went overseas, and our first travel was by boat. Mm-hmm. And we went there, it took us 21 days to get from San Diego to Guadalcanal, where we first saw land. And
tell us about that, the boat ride, and what kind of ship you were on.
Do you remember the name of the ship was?
I don't remember the name of the ship. I remember the name of the ship coming home. I don't remember that one going over. But it was a converted, you ever hear of Kaiser Corporation?
No.
They were great shipbuilders. They built Jeeps that we used and that kind of stuff, you know. And anyway, they converted a lot of these merchant ships that they had. They made troop ships out of them. They had to build places to sleep, bunks and stuff. So they converted all these things. And I don't know, I mean, seems to me we got bed bugs in there, the first night or something. They got rid of those finally, but whether it was from the material they brought in or something. And but we had some kind of quarters. That was my first experience of taking a shower with salt water. I don't know if you ever experienced that or not. But I was using my soap and it didn't work. But you live through it, I guess. But I don't know. I got seasick. Not bad. I mean, not like some of the people, but I'd go along just fine, and all of a sudden it get worked on me, and then I get seasick. And after I got it once, and I was over. I never got it again, but not on that trip. I got it on other trips, but so it was just that one time after until I get my system adjusted.
You said you didn't get it that bad. How bad did other men get it?
Oh, they were sick days in and day out.
The whole trip?
Yeah, well, maybe not the whole trip, but practically the whole trip.
How many would you say were on the ship?
I don't know how many were sick, I don't know. But it was interesting to watch the ocean, the way it changed from the high waves to almost glassy appearance, and see the fluorescent sparkles at the night, you know, and you can see flying fish around and things like that. It's quite an experience. And in my travels, you know, when I first went over there, before we went to the Philippines, we saw the Southern Cross for the first time and things like that, you know. We had this introduction of passing from across the equator. They made you go through a ceremony, King Neptune's chambers or something like that. It was quite an ordeal. Some of the people had it rough, other people didn't have it rough, depending on who gave them the hard time and what they were doing. But I didn't have too bad a time.
It took you 3 weeks, you said, to get there?
3 weeks before we saw land again, or before we lived on land.
What did you do to pass the time there? Did you work or clean? Or?
Well, they always had you do guard duty, and certain ones were assigned mess duty. Our platoon wasn't assigned to that, and so on. But they had something for us to do all the time. Right. Of course, they always had to get out and do exercise every morning, and didn't want you to get bored, of course.
What time did you get up on the ship at the same time as?
Pretty much. We had to get up there by 6 anyway. I don't know, they just decided that was a reveille call for everybody or what.
What kind of exercises did you do on the ship?
Well, just regular physical exercises. You jump up and down, do this, you know, and, do your push-ups and things like that.
Did you see any other ships while you were
On the way
going across
over-
to the Philippines?
On the way over, I don't think we did. And I understand afterwards that there were some ships that had experienced torpedoes, but we didn't. We were fortunate, I guess. They sent escorts after that. Before that, we went over by ourselves. We didn't have any escorts or anything.
You said you were a staff sergeant.
Yeah.
What were your duties as a staff sergeant?
Not much different than what it would when I was a private, really, but you just had certain assignments you had to go through. I didn't have a platoon or anything like that under me.
No.
How'd the assignments change from being a private to a staff sergeant?
Well, I guess you had a little more privileges.
Like what?
That's anything. No, I can't recall that we had any more difficult assignment or more responsible assignments or anything.
What kind of privileges did you have?
Well, I guess not as much inspections for one thing.
When you say inspections, do you mean by officers?
Yeah.
Just of your
They'd
camp?
come through, you know, and they'd inspect your bunk to see it was made right and all this kind of thing.
How often was a private's room inspected? Do you know?
Well, we didn't have rooms, we had tents, except in groups, we didn't. So, they'd just come through once a week or something like that to see that they were still trying to maintain some order of cleanliness.
What would the punishment be if it wasn't just
Extra
physical?
physical work or something. Like raising your rifle over your head 100 times or more, you know, just that kind of discipline.
Mm-hmm.
Was it hard to keep your room in order?
No, not if you tried. You kept your clothes picked up and kept your bunk made and your stuff in some kind of order. We had duffel bags. We didn't have lockers, for example. So we had to have things in our duffel bags.
Do you remember your last few days of service when you found out you were going back home?
Yeah. I mean, basically, the first thing was on August 15th when we heard that bomb had been dropped, or a little before that, whatever it was. And then we were wondering whether we qualified to go home or not. And I had enough points to go home at that time, so I took it. As I said, the next move would have been China, and some of the other ones went on to China. And they reported that when they got there, the arrangements weren't quite to what they had hoped, because they went from the Philippines up to China, which was winter weather at that time, without adequate preparations for having winter clothes or even winter blankets or even winter barracks. So they had a pretty miserable time for a week or two. But I didn't.
You said you'd accumulate enough points. What is?
Yeah, at that time they had the length of time you were in the service and things like that. How many months you served overseas, and they, I think you needed a minimum of 35 points. I don't know how it was graded, but those who had the 35 points were eligible to be shipped home.
Were you excited to go home and glad to go
Oh
home?
yeah, I was glad to go home.
Glad the war was over?
We went, I was overseas 14 months at that time, was all, but it's quite a stretch.
Mm-hmm.
How many men from your platoon went home and how many went to China?
I don't know.
And so, what was the name of the boat that you went home in?
Carlisle.
Carlisle?
Carlisle, just like Carlisle, Pennsylvania down here.
And
And it was later sunk on one of the islands there with this nuclear testing they were doing.
No.
That much I can remember about it. But the interesting thing is, when we got back, we didn't get to lay around. They always had us in close order drill. That just irked me to see these privates and corporals out there drilling this now.
what was the ship ride home like? Was everyone
Exuberant about it?
right?
Well, the only thing that I can remember about it, we stopped at the Philippines and didn't get to get off. I don't know why they didn't let us off, but we were there and they wouldn't allow us to get off the ship. So, did I say Philippines? I meant Hawaiian Islands.
Hawaii.
Oh,
Yeah, I meant Hawaiian Islands. We left from the Philippines.
Right.
how long was the ship ride back? Do you remember?
No, I don't.
And you came back to San Diego.
Well, we actually came back to Oakland, California, in that general area, and we stayed there for a while. And I can't remember if we went back down to San Diego or not. But I know I then took a train ride back to the Great Lakes to be discharged.
How long were you back in America, but not out of the service?
From approximately the 23rd of October, I think, to the 20th of November.
Oh, so about a month.
It wasn't long. I don't know whether the 23rd is, I remember reading something about October 23rd in there, but I can't remember what that was related to.
It said it was filed for record on the 3rd of December.
Yeah,
But
what up above there, doesn't it say
Oh.
something about?
is this right here?
Yeah.
23rd of October?
That was maybe, yeah, you served in the Pacific area from the 15th of August of 44 to the 23rd of
23rd,
October.
yeah.
So, yeah.
So that's when I left and when I returned.
I know my grandpa served in India and then Okinawa, and he has some, like, I know a gold purse that he bought for his wife and some things that he bought there. Did you have anything that you
Not that I
bought or you
remember.
kept from? No.
No, I wasn't smart enough to think of those things.
So when you got out of the service, what was your first couple days and weeks like after being home
Well,
after so long?
Let's see, I got out on November the 20th. By the time I got home, I suppose it was somewhere around that time. And by January the 3rd, I was enlisted at Iowa State University. And I can recall the latter part of December and the first part of January that I was suffering from such a toothache that it was phenomenal. And finally I went to a dentist in Ames there, where Iowa State's located, and had the tooth pulled. He looked at it and he said that whoever put that filling in didn't do a very good job, and that was a military filling.
Was it?
But I remember I paid for that. And he pulled that tooth, and I had a tooth missing in the front, and he put a partial plate for that tooth, and pulled that, and that whole mechanism cost me $64. And that partial plate I had for over 50 years.
Wow.
So that was $64 well spent.
So you said you went to school with the GI Bill. How did that work? Did you
Well,
just
at that
apply?
time, I mean, it was just a benefit that the GIs had. They could elect to do that. They could elect to do something else. Some of them elected to be on 52 weeks on pay without working, you know. They had all kinds of opportunities, and a lot of them took advantage of different things.
Did you Was your whole education paid for?
Yes. It was paid for in this manner, that they paid for all of the tuition and the books and things.
Everything?
Yeah, and then in addition to that, they gave us a stipend for living.
Wow.
Like, I think we got about $100 a month for living.
Mhm.
How much did you make while you were in the 14 months you were in the Pacific?
Well, the staff sergeant's salary was $96 a month.
What'd you do with the money? Did you keep it or did you send it home?
I guess I spent it. I sent some home, I know. But I didn't use it very wisely. The only thing I did that was wise was I kept my GI insurance.
When you got back to America, did you join a veterans organization? Not then.
No, no. I had toyed with the idea of going into the voluntary reserve. And I just kind of procrastinated about that. And then while I was in the school in Korea, Korea War come up. And if I'd been in the voluntary reserve, I'd have been shipped overseas right away. Because in the voluntary reserve, they picked those people to fill the units that were vacant spots, and they draft the whole unit of the regular reserves and then pick from the voluntary reserves to replace them. So I'd have been a prime subject. That's all it is.
Did you stop her?
Alright.
Okay, the question was what I did before I went into the military service.
Yep.
I grew up in a small farm in Iowa. We had 80 acres of land, and we had a general farming practice. I'd been active in 4-H work and things of this nature, and subsequent to my high school graduation, I went into what's called the Dairy Herd Improvement Association as a supervisor, in which I'd go around and take samples from each cow that was milked and determine the butterfat content of the cow's milk and determine what kind of rations that cow should have, things of this nature. And every herd we'd go to, some of the largest herd we had at that time was something in the neighborhood of 20 or 30 cows. And you can imagine that's how it compares today. So I had that for 2 years. I graduated in 1941, so after I had that 2 years, I went into the military service.
You said earlier after you got a degree from Iowa State in agriculture engineering.
Right.
Did working on the farm before the war inspire you to get that engineering degree?
Well, I imagine that was part of it. One of the things that influenced me was that I was in electrical engineering when I first got out of the school. Out of the military, and after 2 years decided that wasn't the field for me at all. So I had some good friends who were in agricultural engineering, so I switched over to that. And I majored in soil and water conservation.
So after you got the degree, were you in agricultural until your retirement?
Well, sort of. I first worked for the Soil Conservation Service in Sioux City, Iowa. And I spent 5 years over there, and then I went to Marion, Iowa for a year, and then I spent another 5 years in Indiana in various positions. And then subsequent to that, I switched over to the Geological Survey, and I spent another 5 years with them. And then I switched to New York State. And I switched to the Geological Survey. I served in the Washington, D.C. area for a while, and then went to New York, and then switched from Geological Survey to the state of New York while I was here in New York.
Do you know what you would have done after high school if you hadn't gone into the service?
I'd have probably tried to become a veterinarian.
Right.
But I don't know if I ever had the money to go to college. That was the question I had.
why didn't you want to be a vet after you using the GI Bill?
Well, the basic reason I think is because my brother-in-law at that time was a veterinarian. So I didn't want to show him how poor I was. You don't have to record that.
How did being in the military influence your thinking about war and the military in general?
Well, the only thing that I noticed is that the average person is not the ones you're contending with, it's only the leaders. And, but I guess it's been that way since day one. That certain leaders influence a certain following, and then they in turn force other people to do certain things. But I think the common person here and the common person there can get along.
Right. What do you think being in the military taught you? How do you think it did it
Well,
help
one
you?
thing it did teach me was some kind of discipline and orderliness, and despite the fact that my wife says I'm not very well organized. In the military, you did things in a certain way and you get them done.
Right.
But no, I never rebelled against authority like a lot of people do.
Did it help you grow up and?
I don't know.
No.
Did it help you in college to have that discipline and like studying and in classes and things like that?
It probably did. It probably did, because I never was that sharp a student. Although I keep kidding my children that after all I was salutatorian in my class. They said, well, Dad, how many were in your class? So I had to tell them there was only 9. But anyway, we had quite a time.
Were there other people at Iowa State using the GI Bill?
Oh yeah.
Do you have any idea what percentage of the
No,
class
no.
or how many?
Swelled from 6,000 back before the war to over 10,000.
Oh, wow.
So whether they were all GI people or not, I don't know.
Do you look at serving in or for the United States as a benefit because it paid for your education?
Oh, it's definitely a benefit to me. I mean, even apart from the education, it would have been a benefit to me.
Because of what it taught you and everything?
Yeah, plus the fact that I wasn't injured. I mean,
Right.
it just helped me to think a little more about others that were injured.
So you believed in the war?
I'm sorry?
Did you believed in the war? You?
Oh, yeah.
Supported
Yeah,
it.
definitely.
Right.
I mean, I think if you could view most of the people back in those days, they all were very much in support.
Mm-hmm.
They had all these drives on, to even from taking the tin foil off of gum wrappers, to save metal.
Mm-hmm.
You said you had 2 older brothers who got a deferment from the military.
Yeah.
Why did you choose to join? Did you try and get a deferment?
No, I didn't try to get one. In fact, some of the farmers asked me to, and I wouldn't do it.
Why not?
I just didn't feel comfortable. I'm glad I didn't, but I wouldn't have felt comfortable if I stayed home.
So you're glad you served?
Yes.
Now that you're older and been through such a significant war, if there's any loved ones that you have that are like in a time like we have the war right now in Iraq, what would you tell them if they were considering joining?
I'd say go for it. No, I'm disappointed that there's so few that they have to serve 3 and 4 duties or tours of duty. I think 1 or 2 is plenty. But I think it's a shame that so many are sitting back here and not doing their part to help out. And that includes my 2 sons. Of course, they're both up in their 40s. But I have a grandson that's in Iraq now.
You do?
You know.
Does
I
it
don't
bother
know.
you that we don't have bond drives now and things like that, like they did during World War II?
Well, what bothers me is we don't have the support. It looks like there's nobody supporting the military in a sense. That I don't know. I mean, we're just not united in this thing at all. That definitely bothers me.
Did you attend any reunions after the war?
No,
No.
I never really had any knowledge of any of them going on. I might have tried to if I'd have been kept in touch with one of them or two.
Is there anything else you wanted to tell us about the war, or now, or your family, or anything else that we can?
Not that I can think of right now. You covered everything pretty thoroughly, I think.
When did you settle down? When did you get married and have a family after the war?
Well, I was 23 when I got married, and I was married when I went into college.
Oh.
Not when I started, but
Okay.
that first year after I was in. Anything else?
Your grandson that's in Iraq now, how long has he been there?
He just went over.
Okay.
He had been in, what was some of the other places over in, I was going to say Korea, but in Vietnam. He's the captain. He has charge of security of his unit.
How old is he?
He'd be, let me think. He's just about 30 now, I guess.
How long has he been in the military?
About 6, 7 years.
Oh. And has he talked to you or you talked to him about your experiences, and has that brought you guys closer because you
No,
can
I
empathize with him?
haven't really talked to him that much because we haven't been that close, really.
Oh.
His what would it be? His grandmother and I were divorced, and so that particular strand of the family hasn't been communicating with me.
Oh.
She was an adopted daughter, so. But I went down to, I saw him, a year ago, and I tried to see him again last February when we were down there in the general area, and he didn't call me back to make an appointment, so I didn't get a chance to see him. So whether he was too busy or whether he forgot about it or lost my number or something, I don't know.
All right. Well. Okay.
Thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Alrighty,
Last words.
no that.